and it looks too AI generated. So we've taken all the M dashes in it out of it and put swear words in. It's ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's exactly it. Right?
Yeah.
Which in a weird way, I mean,
Hello and welcome to episode 320 of the Rockstar CMO effing Marketing Podcast, a proud member of the Marketing Podcast Network. It's Saturday the 2nd of May. I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm not a rockstar, but I'm a full-time B2B CMO, and I hope you're well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. The intention of this podcast is to inspire your inner marketing rockstar, and for this week's dose of marketing street knowledge, I'll be joined by Jeff Clark to discuss the predictions post we've been meaning to share with you from Marketo founder Jon Miller before I join Robert Rose in our virtual bar, the Rose and Rockstar, and I ask, can you edit AI content from mediocre to memorable? But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back after this word.
We'll be right back.
After this word. We'll be right back.
Welcome, Ian, to the Rockstar CMO studio. How are you today?
Thank you very much. I'm good, and jumped into your pause again. How are you, mate? How's sunny Massachusetts? Is it sunny?
Sunny Massachusetts is, in fact, right now sunny. And beautiful spring. The flowering trees and the flowers on the lawn are popping out. So it's
nice.
And we had some rain over the last day or so, which it had been getting dry. So that's helping.
Good.
And it's beautiful. How about in your neck of the woods?
Same. It was t-shirt weather today. Well, for British.
Oh my gosh!
And I went for a walk. And I mean, I think because I was walking, that's what the short sleeves were good for. But it was a jolly nice day today. And I think we've got some rain coming. And like you, we probably need it, weirdly enough, because we haven't had rain for a couple of weeks. So, yes. So, and of course, we've got a long weekend this weekend, and that's when it's going to rain.
And what is the And so what is the justification for this upcoming holiday?
It's just our spring May holiday, I think.
Oh, it's actually it's like May.
Yeah, May.
Today's May Day, and yeah.
So
excellent.
I'm not quite sure what the connotation is. I think it's some sort of workers' day to some people, isn't it?
Yeah,
the early May holiday.
People work. Yeah.
people not working work. Anyway, right. So this week we're going to crack into a particular article that we've had on our list for a little while, because I think, as I've shared with the listeners a couple of weeks ago, you and I keep a list of things we like to we're looking forward to discussing on the show, and sometimes those things sit on the list for a little while, right? Which is this one. It's a set of predictions by Jon Miller, who was the former CMO and co-founder of Marketo and former CMO at DemandBase. You've probably heard of him, listeners.
Yep.
And a splendid industry observer who's well worth following. And the article that we picked up on, that we put on our list, was on the Chief Martech blog. It was published back in January, and it was simply called Jon Miller's Predictions for B2B Go-to-Market in 2026. Yes, folks, it's April, and we're going to do a predictions article. But it's because we've had this on the list for a while, but I think we both agreed it's still worth taking a look at. And in that article, which I'll of course include a link to in the show notes, Jon makes 12 predictions, and it's quite a meaty thing, isn't it, Jeff? It's not just
extremely meaty.
Yeah, each of those 12 he describes in detail what he thinks. And as is the editorial policy of this podcast, we'll pick 5 that resonated with us. What say you, Jeff?
Well, the one thing I'll say, which I think to allay any fears that we're late in talking about predictions, is that the good thing about his articles is that he talks about, here's what I'm thinking about is happening now, or here's what the prediction is. Here's what I think will happen this year. Here's what I think will happen, near future. Here's and here's things to watch out for. Yeah. And then he links to how he graded his past predictions. Yeah, so you can see in the previous year, he gave himself a B for his 11 predictions I forgot to look at how many were right on, and because he grades at A, B, C, blah blah blah. I don't think he failed on anything. And so as you follow the annual predictions from 2023 on, when he started this, you can see that things don't always happen as quickly as others. But this year, as is always the case, AI is having a big influence on the current predictions that he's got. Yeah. And it's not all about AI, but there's a lot that's influenced. AI has influenced these.
Yeah. And indeed, it is the year of AI for sure. So we can't really avoid it. Another episode where we're going to talk about AI. So, and I think
we should do an episode where we drop the letters A and I from everything we say, so that some words get kind of concatenated.
Yeah, the AI free show.
Yeah, really.
So where are we kicking this off? You're going to do 1, 3, and 5. I'm going to do 2 and 4. What's number 1?
Marketers will begin marketing to agents, not humans.
Ooh.
And we've talked about this topic, I think, a couple times in the past few months. And since the buyers are using AI and their large language models to do their research for their needs or solutions for their needs, then you need to be talking their language.
Yes.
Or I should say, their language of the LLM. And there are some, interesting stats in this. That there was a Trust Radius report that he cited that in 2025 was the year of answer engine optimization, AEO. So it's a new 3-letter acronym, which is not likely to be a one-hit wonder. 90% of B2B buyers use tools like ChatGPT for research. 72% encountered Google AI overviews during their vendor evaluation. I mean, I can't get away from the Google AI. It's like I didn't want the AI overview, but I got it. So you just can't get away from it. It's ubiquitous. And the problem for marketers is that, like, I just remember the days, when you'd be going into a senior level executive meeting and they'd say, well, what about our Google ranking? And you'd say, well, it's complicated. And we got kind of past that for a while, but now it's like, where are we in terms of, our rankings, in terms of hitting, these LLMs and being, being part of that conversation. So, be sure to put your content. There's also this Jon Miller has some recommendation stuff like that. Is that put your content in third-party sites that the LLMs like to read. G2, Reddit. I mean, there's certainly a lot out there, and so you not just need to be making sure that your content on your owned properties are able to be read by LLMs, but on third-party properties. And the challenge is that, there's a lot to think about in the near future, that is noted: AI agent tracking, paid AEO, so paid agent engine optimization, and the content architecture for dual audiences, which I thought that was really interesting because you can create content architecture for the web experience of your buyers, and you can also have ways that the LMs get direct access to information on pricing, knowledge bases, et cetera. Yeah. So this is, potentially a future rabbit hole for us to cover, but it is. There's a lot of meat there to be thinking about in terms of being successful in the near term in this area.
Yeah, and that last point, I saw somebody post an article about that where they were publishing markup, their website in markup, because the LLMs find it easier to read markup, but he wasn't really seeing that much of a traffic change. But it'd be interesting to see how that goes. But also, I mean, like all these predictions, like you say, where you say it might be a rabbit hole for future episodes, there is probably a whole show's worth of content in this particular prediction. In fact, probably in all of them that we've plucked out. But we've covered a fair amount of this in the past, isn't it? Because I can't remember whether it was on, I think I mentioned it a few weeks ago. The thing that I find encouraging on this GEO or AEO topic as it sort of unfolds is it seems that the robots like content that's written in a direct style without all the marketing fluffery and business speak. It needs to answer questions directly and all that good stuff. So it seems to me that, it encourages marketers to state the problem that their product solves instead of listing industry-leading, paradigm-shifting, data-led features. Then I'm all for it, right? So I think the outcome of this could be simpler, better, more succinctly well-written websites, because suddenly all of these digital marketers and content marketers that used to, cut and paste from their competitors actually have to, create something that's readable by us and by the robots. Yeah,
yeah, that's right. And it's like another thing that says we need to go back and be able to do the fundamentals. Here's another reason that we need to be able to do the fundamentals of our language, and how we talk about these issues to other customers.
Exactly. And so, I mean, we did some research, didn't we? We were talking about it on the podcast a little while ago. I looked at a whole bunch of B2B websites, and it was really hard. And most of them didn't state the problem they solve. They dive straight into the features. So I think if you're going to educate an LLM, the first thing it needs to know is what problem you solve. So,
because that's how it's going to answer. If somebody's using the LLM to say, how do I solve this problem? That's what they want to hear. That's what the LLM wants to hear.
Exactly. So, like you say, that's a rabbit hole for another day, right? So let's keep teeing up more rabbit holes here. What is number 2, Ian? Well, you picked this for me.
You don't have to tell them that.
It's the prediction that taste, trust, and accountability will become the antidote to AI slop. And I was also drawn to this one, and you suggest I pick this up because I've written a bit about it on my Tuesday 2 Cents blog and in our Beat newsletter for Rockstar CMO. And I think you can also merge this with his prediction that AI inbox gatekeepers will turn email marketing into earned media, which I think pulls at the same thread. So I think, I'm stating the bleeding obvious, but synthesized content has been the low-hanging fruit for AI adoption. And as marketers, we can't be trusted with nice things. So the first use case has been to create B2B boring content at scale and span the shit out of it across all the channels, right? I actually read a post earlier by a chap called Adrian Bloom, who is part of the CMS industry that I've one of my network chums, and he posted about how we as B2B marketers have been producing slop for years. It's just now AI just helps us produce it even faster and at scale.
Well, yeah,
right? Which
it's efficiency. It's all about efficiency,
which I thought was wonderful, and it's something that I've kind of pulled at before. Is that B2B content is a low bar for AI to hit, right? So, but of course, we've talked about trust and taste on this podcast too. And if I can point the listener to a conversation I had with Robert Rose about Rick Rubin, he's a music producer and mogul who is not a musician, but an arbiter of taste, right? He didn't need to know the craft of what it is that he was good at choosing, right?
Yeah.
So I agree. And as Jon says in his predictions, the scarce resources are human judgment, relationships, and the willingness to be accountable for what you share. Now, I thought that last point was quite good because I haven't heard that explored. So I've heard us talk about taste and human judgment and relationships, but the willingness to be accountable. And I think that is such a good point because I think we've lost that. We started losing that in marketing automation, right? It's insulated marketers from that accountability, which is why we spam. We wouldn't spam people ourselves if we were emailing them directly. And it's just that AI is taking that further. And I think it's an emotional investment to communicate and sell human to human, but you get a machine to do it and that friction is removed, right? So I think that accountability is a really interesting thread to pull on. And I think the only weakness I saw in this prediction is that, today's AI slop is the worst copy AI will ever write. And I'm not the only person saying that, right? This AI stuff's just going to get better and better. And it won't be quite so detectable by us as we get used to it. And if the content's useful or entertaining, will we really care is going to be the other issue. But if I circle back to the prediction, I love a quote from Anne Handley I use quite a lot. She's the queen of great business writing in most people's opinion. Your from line matters more than your subject line. And I think that's what Jon is pulling at here, right? Is that it's going to be about who wrote it rather than what it's about. And the value of, she also goes on to say, the value of marketers increasingly comes in the things that cannot be automated. So I think that's the shift, isn't it? That's basically what this is saying. I've wound on too long, Jeff, but what do you think?
Well, I think this is really important, and it's also a quality versus quantity, argument. It's, this is, I think this is the thing that has been hard ever since we got the tools of marketing automation and whatnot. It's now we can do like lots of stuff and not necessarily focus on each interaction, each engagement. And so that is the challenge with using, these AI tools as marketers is, how do we make sure that AI can help us be, doing engagement in the right context and getting the right messages across without just being a bunch of slop and just doing, lots of stuff as opposed to quality connections.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, I think that idea of the idea of being accountable, I think, is something we really ought to lean into at some point in our discussions. So what have you got for number 3, fella?
Number 3 is composable stacks, marketing tech stacks, or maybe if we say revenue tech stacks, will be the mainstream by 2030, but only 20% will adopt it in 2026. So I love this one because about 5 to 7 years ago, when I was doing martech, inventories and assessments with clients, and we created. This is where I was at Serious Decisions, which then went on to in the Forrester culture, created this idea of a tech stack with different layers from the data repository, which could be your customer data platform, your CRM, your data lakes, etc., to an analytics layer like your analytics tools, Power BI, etc., an orchestration layer, your workflow, content marketing, web content management, and finally a delivery tools layer where you're connecting to the buying audience with email, social, web, etc., at the very top. And we would categorize different types of applications in each of those layers and graded the client's capabilities in each area, and kind of to show where where are the holes in your tech stack, what's working for you, what's not working for you, which we use other tools to kind of create that assessment. And he talks about it in terms of data, and he kind of combines analytics and orchestration into a decisioning layer, but that's kind of just semantics. And so this idea of a composable tech stack, I mean, it certainly made sense to me, but when he says it's going to be real by 2030 and only 20% adopted by this year, I was kind of like, well, what? What have we been talking about trying to advise customers on for these these past 5-7 years? And the quote that I noted from him is a composable stacks trades vendor managed convenience for flexibility and control, which is certainly the idea that we were trying to give clients is that it's like if you think about how all of these tools in your toolbox interact with each other and how they help you, whether it's in some sort of lead opportunity flow, whether it's in how you're tracking engagement, it's how you're aggregating data so that it can be properly analyzed, is that there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle, and rather than think about my CRM, of course you get to like Salesforce or a lot of other vendors, they're going to say our CRM plus the other components, the options we sell. I mean, that is that'll do absolutely everything for you. And again, that's vendor convenience as opposed to really thinking about how it's supposed to work work well in your environment and serve your needs as a marketer. So anyway, so I think that it's a great point. It's also an interesting point where AI comes in because tools like a Microsoft Copilot, if you're a Microsoft shop, can help you organize or orchestrate across these apps. And one of the fans of our show, or we're a fan of this show, Keith Smith, the advertist, he said he explored using Copilot to do simple outreach. It's like he says, why pay a big chunky legacy sales and new business systems when it can be integrated with Copilot? Let's pull from this source of data. Let's execute this communication. Let's test how it works. And within seconds, you've got something that's measurable. He says a measurable cold new business outreach program. And so, again, AI comes in to say, if we think about how our tech stack works, the process is the exchange of data, and then we can see how AI tools can help us be more efficient in how we're using that all those tools. it's a potential win for us as marketers. The challenge that he knows I think is appropriate is this context engineering. So this is where you can start orchestrating tactics like the example we have and build automation for different types of tactics you're using, webinars, event prep, follow-up, et cetera. And the AI system will start capturing the outcomes that work, what didn't work, why. Again, though, this back to your previous point is like we shouldn't be just trying to look at how we're expanding and doing more and more and more and more and more engagement without it being, really, relevant, as personal as possible, and maybe helping to automate some of the back end things so that we on the engagement either between sales and the customer, or marketing directly with the customer can be as good engagement as we can get.
I thought I'd lost you down the rabbit. That was a mouthful,
wasn't it?
Yeah. I thought I'd lost you down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, well, and I also realized I wrote a ton of notes for this that I was like, I got to get kind of shorten this up a bit.
No, but it's a big topic, and the interesting thing there, I think, is that I was surprised actually in his prediction of how few composable stacks. Like you say, it's something we've been discussing for years and years. I mean, I don't know how he's going to measure the success of this, but it would seem, I would imagine that most people's martech stacks have an element of composability about them anyway. And I think that it's one of those trends that has some AI hype applied to it, I think, but it's just best practice, isn't it? However you refer to it, as you say, it's hard to manage. And as the article points out, but also what I think I'm seeing, and I haven't really dug into detail of what Keith was talking about, and I've seen a ton of these, automated SDR, BDR type things using AI, right? So there's plenty of that about. And I think it's, that's the challenge we've always talked about in terms of managing your MarTech stack, auditing it, tracking the data, tracking the cost and all that kind of stuff. It gets much harder when business users are tech enabled, right? So, and I think we used to call it shadow MarTech or shadow IT.
Yeah.
And we had that already with simple SaaS tools that people could buy with their, or with their credit cards or low code solutions that they could do. But I think that is going to be exacerbated by vibe coding and agents. And I think this is going to be a really big challenge for large organizations because, if you don't know where your data is swirling around and where your data is being stored, you're going to come up against some compliant issues. I would imagine that there'll be a big compliant issue happening at some point with some of this stuff. And I think that auditing you talked about, Jeff, that we've always talked about, which is that you can actually realize a lot of savings and efficiency if you do a really good tech audit. It's going to be like fucking whack-a-mole with this shit, isn't it? So, but if you can imagine, can't you? If you're a large organization and everybody's spending like $50 a month on ChatGPT or something, that's a bit of a leak, isn't it? So
it's also you lose control of your communications with your buyers out there because that's. Yeah. I mean, that was an issue with marketing automation and email marketing, and it's an issue. It's an issue as companies grow and they get more diversified. And they have multiple sales forces talking to the same customers, and then now you just gave them a tool where they can go create their own outbound marketing campaigns that they think are smart. But it's
Oh, I've had the challenge with some of these LinkedIn prospecting tools, which is that sales guys can sign up to them for 99 quid a month, and then but then you're also running campaigns in HubSpot or as a corporate organization, and you could start tripping over each other, right, with that stuff. So it's that, and I think as you've exposed with your 45-minute monologue, is definitely a rabbit hole for another day. So where are we? What are we doing? I don't know.
We need to get a new set of rabbits because we're making more holes than we have rabbits. So that brings us to number 4.
I gotta go.
It's yours. Go for it.
This again is something we could really go into, and it's related to this last thing that we were talking about. There is that AI will completely transform legacy SaaS martech but not in 2026 is Jon's prediction. And I think, this is the big one and that we could definitely devote a whole show to. But I'll just focus on one bit because just for the listeners, like I say, these were chunky predictions. There's a page of copy against each one of these from Jon. So there's a lot to focus on. But the bit I want to focus on here is I like his cautiousness because we are at peak hype of AI at the moment. And possibly it was even peakier when Jon wrote this at the turn of the year. But what Jon predicts is, yes, AI will reshape marketing technology, but it will take 2 to 5 years. 2026 will be a year of hybrid experimentation, not wholesale transformation, in which SaaS platforms, old and new, will coexist with their agentic AI and human in the loop remain essential across nearly all implementations, which I think is a nice, cautious view, right? Because I think what he's saying is that it typically takes that long. If you look back in time, Jesus Christ, I mean, you compare it with that Composable thing he's just been talking about. That's even longer, right?
It does make me, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's like, it does make me think, because I remember doing a conference speech on AI in martech, and it's like we were saying somewhat the same thing, 4 to 5 years ago, and it's like,
I guess
it's not this year, but get ready,
Yeah. But and as I sort of was intimating there, we can apply the Gartner hype side to this,
Absolutely.
and I think that we can agree that AI seems to be at peak of inflated expectations. But I think the next stage in the model is the trough of disillusionment, before we enter the slope of enlightenment and it becomes mainstream, which is called the plateau of productivity. But I'm not sure about this 2 to 5 year prediction. It feels a bit quicker than that to me, and we might skip quite quickly through the trough of disillusionment. But I might be getting giddy on the hype, right? Because I think I like, having spent a couple of decades in marketing technology, I like Jon's observation that vendors tend to have functionality that is way ahead of client needs. So just to quote him again, enterprises move slowly. Brinker's martech's law, obviously referring to Scott Brinker, who runs martech, chief martech, states that technology changes faster than organizations can absorb it. We've seen that, right, Jeff?
Yeah.
And think
absolutely.
how long past tech transitions, mainframe to enterprise software to SaaS took. Within marketing, consider how long MQLs have persisted. The shift is happening, but it's measured in years and not quarters. I think that might be a slightly pessimistic. I don't think it's the same with this, right? Because I think AI is not just an enterprise solution that's transforming enterprise software. It's a personal productivity tool. And like we were saying just a minute ago, it's going to be hard to manage. And there's a very real threat to simple SaaS solutions when employers can vibe code their own stuff. But of course, I'm finding that folks are finding the real cost of this, maintenance time, and the AI tokens aren't actually that cheap. But I think it's a thread that we can pull on for a whole show. But I really like the prediction. I'm just wondering whether 2 to 5 years is because as you were saying, right, AI is getting into everything, and I think we're already at that point where Salesforce has got agentic AI, and we're already using these tools within our traditional software.
I think the other thing is that when you think about current employment trends, companies are not hiring lots of, they're not necessarily laying off people, they're not hiring lots of new people. And then you get into businesses that are growing, the existing staff are going to be squeezed. They're going to be working with these tools to just be more efficient, do more work. And then it's like they get good at it, and the tools rapidly, improve. So I would agree that it's. I think when I was speaking on this particular topic, again, that was 4 or 5 years ago. It was at that point AI was in the digital asset management applications. It was in some of the CRM applications. It was infiltrating its way. It certainly was in analytics tools, customer data platforms, et cetera, et cetera. So it's actually it's been a while that it's been the foundational pieces have been in there, and so now we've got this agentic AI which can actually ramp up further. So yeah, I think it's going to be a quick. It's going to be a quick transition, and it'll be interesting to see. It's certainly interesting to see how it affects marketing team staffing.
All right. Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But also, I mean, I wish you hadn't pulled at that, Fred, because that's a whole nother thing, isn't it? About staffing and these claims that people have got whole, agentic teams that are replacing real people, both in dev and in marketing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I heard a Forrester podcast that talks about that, businesses are making the hiring decisions and the firing decisions before they've even got, they haven't got that agentic capability in yet. So it seems to be a flag of convenience just to reduce costs as far as I can see. But
Yeah.
Anyway, right, we're cruising home with this thing quite,
we got to land this plane.
Cruising is probably the best way of describing this particular episode. So what's number 5, mate?
Number 5, oh my gosh, we're going to say AI-driven uncertainty will intensify in 2026. Preparation is the only answer. This actually seems like what we were just talking about. But he refers to the World Uncertainty Index, which actually, the inputs to that have more to do with a lot of things other than just AI, but it has spiked to never seen levels in 2026. And if you provide a link in the show notes to this, people can drill into the World Uncertainty Index. And who knew that somebody was tracking this, but it's actually computed by counting the percent of the word uncertain or variations of that in the economic intelligence reports for individual countries, around the world. So AI, job displacement, public policy responses, I would add, wars and global trends, energy, costs and sources, those are all...
that?
Huh?
Nothing. No blame. No blame.
Yeah, really. are all driving up uncertainty, and so how do we prepare? I mean, I thought this was a really good section because I think he had 5 or 6 different things to talk about how to prepare. 2 that I thought were really important were building resiliency and efficiency within your team. So much of what we mentioned are strategies to help you adapt to changing tech and the changing environment and become more efficient in your execution. So that helps create a cushion that helps absorb, if changes are happening and you're going to that's a challenge to your marketing team or your business as a whole. Being more resilient is obviously the way to go. And upscaling your team, both using AI, learning how best to use AI. We've already noted some of that, and also the fact that I think that this is where your operations, and your content professionals are going to be most helpful in getting them familiar with the tools, and then enabling them the ops team to help enable the whole marketing team to use AI technology more effectively, and the content team to be able to use it to get engaged with your buyers more effectively. So, other changes will be evident, by your own personal experiences and the ability of hitting goals while the world around you changes. So, I on a different podcast, and I can't remember what the name of the podcast, but there was this quote from Robert Putnam, who wrote the book Bowling Alone, all about how the social media has changed the way we interact with each other as human beings. And he says, too often we adopt technology and then we adapt the technology's values without thinking about how we incorporate the technology into our own values.
Wow.
And I just think it's a good axiom for life. But we should be doing the latter. We as marketers should be figuring out, the fundamentals are still going to apply. We need to know what buyers need. We need to know how to engage them in their own language and where they go for information. And so let's keep the values of our 5 fundamentals of marketing, our 5 effing fundamentals of marketing as we apply these 2 tools and adopt to these trends.
I agree. I mean, that's such a great quote there. And the other thing, the thing with that is the problem is I think a lot of people are being pushed to do something with AI. I mean, we've seen that from some of the Gartner CMO surveys and stuff. And unlike any other technology that we've had, probably, is that people are being pushed to here's a hammer, figure out, So I mean, I agree. It is like Pandora's box has been opened and uncertainty is guaranteed. But because you're such a learned fellow, I thought I'd better check my quotes, and because I used the Pandora's box quote, and apparently, I mean, it wasn't a box for a start; it was some kind of jar-shaped thing, from what I can make out. But also, hope was left inside, so all of the ills were released, but hope was still in there. So hopefully, Pandora's box has still got some hope in it.
Yeah.
But as you say, with our fundamentals, right? The underlying business, the jobs to do, the problems to solve are unchanged. And right now, AI is being applied to everything. And as I was saying, every nail is being hit by an AI hammer. I mean, geez, the other day, and bless them. I mean, it was lovely and everything. And I was watching this webinar, and some people are getting so excited by these tools, which is nice to see. And I watched. It was one of these sort of networking Zoom calls, and a marketer was pleased as punch as they got Claude to create a simple CRM in Notion, and they showed how to do it, and it was a big demo. And obviously, we're putting software development in the hands of people that have never developed or demoed software before, so this is like magic to them, right? But when I looked at it, I thought this is completely pointless. For a start, creating a simple CRM in Notion is really easy, and there's templates already that exist for that. And there's plenty of simple CRMs that cost close to free. But the thing is people are doing all these experiments, and it's going back to our point previously we were making about when we were talking about the technology stacks, right? But I think that some of this is, and the LinkedIn hype about this stuff is feeding this uncertainty on the SaaS industry and on the role of marketing technologists and all of that stuff, right? So I think it's a hard one to conclude, isn't it? There's so much we've been talking about, but we need to get enabled. But hopefully, as we get to the plateau of productivity, the froth of this whole thing comes off a bit, right? And people stop building bloody CRM tools in Notion. But
well, that reminds me when I worked at. So I'll mention one of the companies I used to work at Pegasystems, and it was all about business process automation, and it was like it's like at our first training course, just as an employee, even though I was only going to marketing, let's build an application, because it was an incredibly easy platform to just think about what you want to automate and what data sources are, and boom, you've got a working application. But the more I worked there, I realized that the challenge for businesses implementing all of these easy develop applications was the overall architecture, what they're trying to accomplish, and not just what you're trying to accomplish as maybe an individual writing software for an accounts payable department, but how does that operate in the architecture of the organization?
Yeah.
That's where the complexity comes in, and that's where you got to be smart about how you apply these tools.
Absolutely, and I've written about this as well. I mean, it is this, the challenge for software development is the adulting, isn't it? It's the security, it's the maintenance, it's the what happens when there's two users and one of them can see one thing, the initial buzz of creating a CRM in Notion and seeing the magic happen is, but what happens when you add another user? What happens when, so I think, I think that'll dampen down the froth a little bit. And also what I'm hearing is that people are complaining about how much these tokens are costing them. So they've gone and spent a bunch of tokens doing something that already fucking existed. And now they're moaning that they're spending too much money on Claude, right? So I think this will start to balance itself out. Anyway, I got to conclude this thing because I need to go and eat some pizza and watch a movie because we're recording this on Friday night. I think that the conclusion is that we've only touched the surface of this bit of work, clearly, because we could have done a whole show on every single one of these points. And there's 13 of them in the actual article, right? And we're getting deep into the year, but I still think that people should check out this article, which is called Jon Miller's Predictions for B2B Go-to-Marketing in 2026. And it's available on chiefmartech.com, to which we have no affiliation whatsoever.
We have no reason. We have not been paid to flout this article.
Yeah, to bang on about it for nearly 40 minutes. But anyway, that brings us to our last agenda item. So the song, Jeff, I picked it last week because you gladly let me do that because we were celebrating 6 years. So what are you going for?
Well, I'm going to pick one of my favorite songs from 1980, The Talking Heads, and partially because I love the line, "This ain't no party, this ain't no fooling around." I mean, we're talking about serious stuff here. Unfortunately, the title is "Life During Wartime," which we happen to be living in, and I had I didn't even think about that when I picked that song, but there you go.
All right, fellas. So we'll play out with "Life During Wartime" by the Talking Heads from 1980. And I think at the moment our schedules are looking a bit skanked. So I think that I'm going to be talking to you in a couple of weeks' time because you're super busy next week. And God knows what I'll do without you, but I'll figure something out. I'll see you in a couple of weeks, mate.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Jeff. And that was a tiny little snippet of Talking Heads there. And I will, of course, include a link to the post that inspired that conversation from Jon Miller in the show notes. Right, time to wind down into the weekend and join Robert Rose, Chief Troublemaker at Seventh Bear, in our virtual bar, the Rose and Rockstar, as I pick his brains over one of his classic cocktails.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to the bar.
Thank you very much, mate. How are you doing?
I'm doing remarkably well, considering everything that's going on in the world. I'm just absolutely ducky. I've just stopped paying attention, right? Just like it's like, oh, he did that. Okay, all right, that's there. Oh, he fell asleep again. All right, well, okay, there you go.
Mate, I'm at the point where America collectively wasn't paying attention. That's how the bugger got in.
Fair enough. That's a fair point. That is an absolutely fair point. Yeah, we deserve everything we're getting right now. That's for sure.
Well, I think we deserve a drink.
We do indeed. We do indeed. Very quickly here. So the funny thing is, for this week, I am not a fan of celebrity-based liquors. The brands, generally speaking. However, I'm going to make an exception. This is a bourbon that I was given as a gift, and it's quite lovely. It's called Father Time. It's Jim Gaffigan, if you know the comic. He's a stand-up comedian, and he basically does mostly like family stuff, like, about his kids and about his wife, and, he's got a lot of kids. And he has this celebrity bourbon called Father Time. And he's got he's got one called the Empty Nester, which is cask strength bourbon, which is, a little bit more expensive. And then he's got the basic, what he calls the caboose, which is the other one. And it's really lovely. It's a lovely, lovely bourbon, very easy drinking. So we're just going to have that with a big rock. We're going to have some Father Time bourbon on a big rock and sip that.
Nice. I like that. I don't have any of that, but I'll have to look it up. I think Woodford is my go-to, but this sounds
Woodford
like it's
is
probably
lovely.
way better.
No, it's not. Actually, it's not better than Woodford. No, it's not better than Woodford. It's just nice. For a celebrity brand, it's actually pretty darn good. So it's a change. I'll put it this way: it's a change of pace bourbon.
Nice.
That you don't have to spend a lot of money on, and the bottle's not huge. So it's an easy sort of change of pace bourbon.
Nice. Well, the question I've got for you this week, I'm actually going to pull on not the same thread as we were talking about last week, but the same publication, the Content Marketing Institute blog. And this isn't by you for a change, but what inspired me to ask you about this is I saw a LinkedIn post which called out an article on the Content Marketing Institute blog that wasn't by you, that suggested that good editing takes AI content from mediocre to memorable. And the LinkedIn post that I read was by another editor, and the premise was, what they were saying was that if the content was AI generated, you can't rescue its mediocrity. It is mediocre by definition. The problem is more structural and fundamental, and you needed to start somewhere else, not arrived here, right? What do you think? And I'm not suggesting you throw your colleague under the bus or anything like that, but what do you think of that debate? Do you think if you were to take AI generated content, we can kind of hammer it into something good?
Well, of course we can. I mean, of course, yeah, right. Of course you can. I think. Look, I think if you read Anne's post in detail, she actually kind of says what the complaining post said, and so you wonder whether they just read the headline and sort of gone, "Ooh, I can do some rage bait here," right? But if you read her post, it's actually quite good, and what she's saying is that, and it's something that I've been talking about a lot recently, which is increasingly you don't know. You don't know whether it's AI or not. It's because one, the AI is getting good enough. Yeah. Two, we are getting better as sort of the somebody. I was a great quote I saw on LinkedIn as well, which somebody said, I'm now doing my own personal Voight-Kampf test on every piece of content to make sure it's not a replicant, which I thought was just brilliant. Anytime you reference Blade Runner, I'm all in. Yeah. But I thought that was a clever way to look at it, because we're getting good at that. We're getting good at that Voight-Kampf. You can spot it now, and this was always my prediction, because they used to say, well, this is the dumbest version of AI that you'll ever see. Mm-hmm. And, what the second half of that sentence has to be, it's also the dumbest version of us that ever exists, right? Because we get better too. And so our eyes to spot AI generated content gets better at, even while the automated AI detectors don't, right? They don't get better necessarily and generate a lot more false positives. But that's also the point, is that humans will also generate a lot more false positive as well. I know plenty of examples where you go, that's AI, and then you go, but it's not. Actually, it's just somebody who doesn't write very well. You know what I mean?
It's just really shit B2B content.
Yeah, right. Exactly. or the reverse, where that's really brilliant. And then you could learn later that they used AI for a lot of it. So we're getting better at it, but we're not experts at it, and we'll never be, because it'll get to a point where it just doesn't matter how much of it. Is it 4 words or is it the entire post? And her point is, can as a great writer, if you start with as a great writer or a great editor, can you massage an AI thing into something that is great? The answer, of course, is yes. But you have to begin with that assumption that that you know what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think I want to talk to you one day about, maybe we'll do it next week. I want to talk to you about whether it matters, whether something's AI generated or not, because you and I have been talking about this a lot. You've talked about it on your podcast a lot. And I'm hoping that you're going to write down some of this stuff that you've been talking about, because I know you've got a lot of ideas about this. But it does sort of pull at this sort of quality thread, and I kind of posted about it last week, and it was like, is it just that the B2B content was such a low bar that it's been easy for AI to emulate it, right? Or is there, and does it matter if the content is fairly generic? But I mean, to Anne's point, so you've mentioned it's Anne Glynn, who's really good. I mean, she's been doing Content Marketing Institute for how long? Since the beginning, hasn't she?
Oh, yeah. Anne has been around for a long time.
Yeah. But I agree with you. You can take the parts and pieces that come out of AI and create something good in it. The other thing is, and I've been waffling too much, and I know we need to get you out of it, but I saw this Tom Wishburne cartoon. It is Tom Wishburne, isn't it? Fishburne, yeah. And it said the feedback has come back about your mission statement or some piece of content. It says, and it looks too AI generated. So we've taken all the M dashes out of it and put swear words in. It's ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's exactly it. Right? Yeah. Which, in a weird way, I mean, I like all great comedy. There's a truth to it, right? There's because what you're doing is, but by the way, there are plenty of writers out there that are having AI generate their thing and then doing a global search and replace on M dashes, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like, you know, and make them all commas, or make them all, you know, the wrong character of M dash, or putting spaces behind them, or introducing punctuation errors, or, you know, putting in swear words, or, you know, or as Anne suggests in her post where she says, look, put in a personal story, you know, put in a personal bit. And that starts to, you know, and I have found that, you know, and she you know, I say this with no, I don't mean to promote my own self, but in the article, she actually mentions me, but she doesn't mention me. She says, you know, there's about halfway through the article, she's like, you want to put your own personal signature and thumbprint on articles. And then she says in parentheses, shout out to my favorite CMI writer who loves the term simply put. And that's me. I mean, and I don't do that because I'm designing it. I do it because it's fucking habit. So, you know, I love saying, well, simply put, you know, at the end of a paragraph, I'll say simply put, and then I'll restate the thesis of the paragraph. And so those levels of thumbprints are just inherent in, but can you add those thumbprints of humanity to something that was either AI assisted or AI generated? The answer is, of course, yes, 100%. Because this gets to the age old question that we've talked about so many times on this podcast before, which is how many grains of sand until you have a pile, right? So how many words in a blog post until it's AI generated? Is it one, or is it a sentence, or is it a paragraph, or is it two paragraphs, or is it the entire fucking thing? And so it doesn't, everybody's line will be different, and everybody's Voight-Kampff test will be different. And so we will increasingly get to a point where you won't be able to tell, I won't be able to tell. And when we find out, we'll go, oh, well, was the content good? If it was good, then it was good, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing this pulls on, which is really annoying about LinkedIn sometimes, is so I actually came to the article from the blog, from the post that I saw, and I thought, well, that's odd. I'll have a look at this. You know, and the other thing is they didn't actually put a link in; they just put a screenshot in, right? Which I always think is interesting when people screenshot stuff and don't link it, so or name anybody. So I saw this, and I went and read the article, and it was one of those times. And I think you said at the beginning when we talked about this, the guy clearly hadn't read the article, because Anne writes a nicely balanced piece about that, doesn't she? About the fact that yes, you know, content can be shit that comes out of AI, and you can't do anything about it. But that's rarely the case.
That's right. It's his complaint is the same complaint I've seen that is just a flawed complaint, which is that the complaint seems to be AI produces average content. And that is not true. It is just empirically not true. AI does not produce average content. What it produces is the most probable content. And there's a big difference, because what it's doing is based on your prompt, or based on the series of prompts, or based on whatever it's looking at as a source material, it will produce the most probable thing that will come out. That might be genius. The most probable might be genius. It's likely to not be. It's also most likely, most probably not going to be genius, right? It's, you know, and there is also probably an error introduction, or a hallucination, as we might call them, that can be introduced as well. And so it's always going for the most probable, which in any given situation, it might be a genius phrase. You know, I mean, sometimes AI will come back with the most brilliant turn of phrase, like you're looking for a particular turn of phrase, or a particular metaphor, or a particular kind of thing, and AI can return something that's quite lovely and beautiful. And absolutely. Then you can change it or not, etc. It tends to be very literal, so for the obvious reason. So that's really it. It's like, it's not always going to be average. It's not always going to be subpar. It might, but it most probably will be. That's the thing.
Yeah, but there's I think we've talked about a few things. There's a number of points at which the human interacts with this thing, and the prompt is important. The idea that you're trying to drive towards, the thing you're trying to research, that's interesting, right? If that's dull, then the thing's going to be dull, and it was going to be dull whether you wrote it or whether AI wrote it.
The idea is derivative, the content will inherently be derivative, whether a human creates it or an AI creates it.
Yeah, and I liked how I think you were talking to Joe on your show, and it sounded like you were describing ChatGPT as the dad genes. I know you didn't say those words, but I could hear those words because they're your words of LLMs. Like, are you still using ChatGPT? You're on Windows too, aren't you? And I thought that was really funny. So I've made the switch. Well, I've got a foot in both camps. I've now got I'm using Orphonic an awful lot. Orphonic, what I'm talking about. I'm using Claude, Anthropic Claude, an awful lot. And I really like it. Gives you a little of a nugget of an idea, like you're saying, a really nice little turn of phrase that isn't quite right, but when you explore it a bit more, it opens up something in you that's the right phrase. It didn't come up with that phrase, but it helps you.
Claude as a critique, using Claude as a critique. This is where I found that Claude just blows ChatGPT out of the water, which is if you ask Claude to critique your writing and point out things, it's unbelievably great. Like it just business to business content, nonfiction content, fiction content, song lyrics, whatever. If you ask it to critique, it's unbelievably great. That's how I use it is as a pressure test and critiquing.
Absolutely. I mean, with both ChatGPT and with Claude, both of them lean towards wanting to rewrite your stuff. I say no, just give me the critique, and then I'll rewrite, and then that's the way that I work as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, mate, we're coming up to. I've got to let you get out of the studio because I know that we're up against time. Where can people find content that could be AI generated, but is incredibly well edited? Where are they going to find that?
Well, that'll be Content Marketing Institute, and that's where I write regularly for them, of course. And then, of course, I'm writing for seventhbear.com, our own little website. And then my newsletter, which of Seventh Bear Lens, as you corrected me last week, which was great, .substack.com. You know my own URLs better than I do.
I type them into the show notes every week. That's probably why. And when people spin the dial on the internet, where they're going to find you, mate?
They'll find me on LinkedIn for sure. That's where I love to connect with people.
Splendid. And will you be in the bar next week?
Of course.
I look forward to it, mate. I'll see you then.
Okay.
Thank you, Robert. Splendid conversation. As today, we're all making decisions about how much we let the robots into our creative process. So that's a wrap on episode 320 of the Rockstar CMO effing Marketing Podcast. Thanks to Jeff and Robert, but most of all, thank you for putting a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track, and jiving along with us. I've been your host, Ian Truscott, and you can find links to our little band and the articles we discussed in the show notes, along with links to our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes at rockstarcmo.com. Next week, I'm going to do a little special, as I'll be on my own in the studio, pulling at that thread we were discussing about the future of marketing technology, before joining Robert in the bar. In the meantime, I'll leave you with a quote from Jon Miller. Don't use AI like a faster typewriter. Use it as a new form of intelligence that helps you think.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Heather Eck hosts an amazing show called Your Radiant Spirit. Heather, tell listeners about the show.
What if the colors you're drawn to, the creative urges you ignore, and the quiet intuitive hits you brush off are actually trying to tell you something? Your Radiant Spirit is the podcast that helps you listen and live with greater clarity and purpose.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find and subscribe at heathereck.com/yourradiantspirit, on marketingpodcast.net, or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.